devotee and is attached to sex life only, within a short time he will have the face of a goat. Text 24. Those who have become as dull as matter by cultivating materialistic education and intelligence are nesciently involved, or in other words, ignorantly involved in fruitive activities. Such men have purposely insulted Lord Shiva. May they continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. Well, here's a clear statement of the, let's say, the damage happened to young people by studying materialistic education and intelligence. They are ignorantly involved in fruitive activities. And it's an insult to Lord Shiva. So they have to continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. So in this verse, the statement Vidya Buddhir is very important. Vidya Buddhi means materialistic education and intelligence. And this is called avidyayam, in nescience, in ignorance, and karma mayam, formed of fruitive activities. So this, unfortunately, who has the life of Daksha. So the same thing is valid today, that anyone who's cultivating materialistic education and intelligence are nesciently involved, ignorantly involved in fruitive activities. And such men have purposely insulted Lord Shiva. May they continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. In other words, they are cursed to remain in the cycle of birth and death. There you are. You put your kids in these modern schools today, and they will be cursed in the repeated cycle of birth and death. I rest my case. All right. So, text 24 says, those who have become as dull as matter by cultivating materialistic education and intelligence are nesciently, meaning ignorantly, involved in fruitive activities. Such men have purposely insulted Lord Shiva. May they continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The three curses mentioned above are sufficient to make one as dull as stone, void of spiritual knowledge, and preoccupied with materialistic education, which is nescience, which is ignorance. Here it is, material education, which is ignorance. After uttering these curses, Nandishvara cursed the Brahmanas to continue in the cycle of birth and death because of their supporting Daksha in blaspheming Lord Shiva. Well, let's take a look for a second. In the previous verse, verse number 20, verse number 22, not previous, two verses before, it says, pretentiously religious householder life in which one is attracted to material happiness and thus also attracted to the superficial explanation of the Vedas. robs one of all intelligence and attaches one to fruitive activities as all in all. Ah, so there is such a thing as the superficial explanation of the Vedas, which makes us like dumb as a donkey and attaches one to fruitive activities as the purpose of life. Okay, so I don't think it could be any clearer than that. We should not send our children to mundane schools where they'll become as dumb as a donkey. uh, okay, so, and then it says, the Daksha has accepted the body as all in all. Therefore, since he has forgotten the Vishnu Pada or Vishnu Gati and is attached to sex life only, within a short time, he will have the face of a goat. A lot of people walking around that look like goats. Why? Because they're engaged in illicit activities. Those who have become as dull as matter by cultivating materialistic education and intelligence are nesciently involved or ignorantly involved in fruitive activities. Such men have purposely insulted Lord Shiva. May they continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. Oh, that's a curse right there. So unless one becomes enlightened in Krishna consciousness, they will continue birth after birth, living in ignorance. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This is Canto 4, Chapter 2, Text 24. The three curses mentioned above are sufficient to make one as dull as stone, void of spiritual knowledge, and preoccupied with materialistic education, which is nescience. Whoa. After uttering these curses, Nandishwara cursed the Brahmanas to continue in the cycle of birth and death because of their supporting Daksha in blaspheming Lord Shiva. So here in this part of the Bhagavatam, you're hearing about curses and uh, other curses between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, I think. Yes. So this went on in previous time, and those curses are still functioning now. Therefore, we're living in dangerous time. And the let's see, the way that people have been cursed is that they are attracted to mundane education. Okay. So if we go back to text number 19, it's very interesting. It says, Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in spite of the requests of all the members of the sacrificial assembly, Daksha, in great anger, cursed Lord Shiva and then left the assembly and went back to his home. So there's cursing and cursing going on here. But text 19 is very significant because it says, anger is so detrimental that even a great personality like Daksha, out of anger, left the arena where Brahma was presiding, and all the great sages and pious and saintly persons were assembled. All of them requested him not to leave, but infuriated, he left, thinking that the auspicious place was not fit for him. Puffed up by his exalted position, he thought that no one was greater than he in argument. It appears that all the members of the assembly, including Lord Brahma, requested him not to be angry and leave their company. But in spite of all these requests, he left. That is the effect of cruel anger. In Bhagavad Gita, therefore, it is advised that one who desires to make tangible advancement in spiritual consciousness must avoid three things: lust, anger, and the mode of passion. Actually, we can see that lust, anger, and passion make a man crazy, even though he be great as Daksha. The very name Daksha suggests that he was expert in all material activities, but still, because of his aversion towards such a saintly personality as Shiva, he was attacked by these three enemies: anger, lust, and passion. Lord Chaitanya, therefore, advised that one be very careful not to offend Vaishnavas. He compared offenses toward a Vaishnava to a mad elephant. As a mad elephant can do anything horrible, so when a person offends a Vaishnava, he can perform any abominable action. So that's a very important verse. My dear Vidura, in spite of the requests of all the members of the sacrificial assembly, Daksha in great anger cursed Lord Shiva and then left the assembly and went back to his home. Okay, so now we'll go to where we're here, to text 23. Daksha has accepted the body as all in all. Therefore, since he has forgotten the Vishnupada or Vishnu Gati and is attached to sex life only, within a short time he will have the face of a goat. Well, here's a prediction of what's going to happen in the near future. Text 24. Those who have become as dull as matter by cultivating materialistic education and intelligence are nesciently involved in fruitive activities. Such men have purposely insulted Lord Shiva. May they continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. So this is a curse, and this curse is functioning today. So we have to be very careful, because the curse is that we will be, let's say, as dull as matter by cultivating materialistic education and intelligence. Well, that's what's being taught in schools today: materialistic education and intelligence, and leading to being involved in fruitive activities. Okay, so text 25. May those who are envious of Lord Shiva, being attracted by the flowery language of the enchanting Vedic promises, and who have thus become dull, always remain attached to fruitive activities. Another curse. Purport. The Vedic promises of elevation to higher planets for a better standard of materialistic life are compared to flowery language, because in a flower there is certainly an aroma, but that aroma does not last for a very long time. In a flower there is honey, but that honey is not eternal. Text 26. These brahmanas take to education, austerity, and vows only for the purpose of maintaining the body. They shall be devoid of discrimination between what is to eat and what is not to eat. They will acquire money, begging from door to door simply for the satisfaction of the body. So okay, now there are curses and counter curses going on here, and some of these curses are still active today on people. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The third curse inflicted by Nandishvara on the Brahmanas who supported Daksha is completely functioning in the age of Kali. There it is, still functioning today. The so-called Brahmanas are no longer interested in understanding the nature of the Supreme Brahman, although a Brahmana means one who has attained knowledge about Brahman. Brahman means the truth. Uh, the in other words, understanding who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vedanta Sutra, although it is stated, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, this human form of life is meant for realization of the Supreme Brahman. Well, there it is. The purpose of life is explained right there. Haribol, Jai. So it says that in the Vedanta Sutra, also it is stated, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. This human form of life is meant for realization of the Supreme Brahman, the absolute truth. Or in other words, human life is meant for one's elevation to the post of a Brahmana. Unfortunately, the modern Brahmanas, or so-called Brahmanas, who come in originally Brahminical families, have left their own occupational duties. Yeah, they're getting jobs as uh, they're taking jobs away from uh, mundane people. Previously, the Brahmanas would have a vow of poverty, and they would be engaged always in understanding Vedic knowledge and practicing Vedic knowledge and teaching it to others. But now, uh, their children have taken up mundane jobs like being scientists and being, mundane people in mundane jobs and taking jobs away from ordinary people. So therefore, uh, that's why people today, not all people, but many people, they don't like Brahmanas in India. They consider the Brahmanas to be corrupt, and the Brahmanas are taking away jobs that were normally taken up by uh, non-Brahmanas. So in other words, the Brahmanas are not doing what they're supposed to do. That is teaching people how to become Krishna conscious. They're engaging in uh, mundane activities for, sense gratification. Okay. So it says here, unfortunately, the modern Brahmanas, or so-called Brahmanas, who come in originally Brahminical families, have left their own occupational duties. There it is. but they do not allow others to occupy the posts of brahmanas. So even though they're not acting like brahmanas anymore, they won't let anybody else take the posts of brahmanas that are qualified, but not necessarily born in the family of brahmanas. The qualification, the qualifications for brahmanas are described in the scriptures, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and in all other Vedic literatures. Brahmana is not a hereditary title or position. Very significant statement here. Whereas most, not all, but many modern brahmanas think that it is a hereditary title. Just because you're born in a family of brahmana, you're considered a brahmana. But sometimes people have no qualification as a brahmana, but still they have the Brahmin thread, which costs maybe, I don't know, uh, $1 or less, not even that, $10, 10 cents. And they have the Brahmin thread, but they don't act like brahmanas. If someone from a non-brahmana family, for example, one born in a family of Sudras, tries to become a brahmana by being properly qualified under the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, these so-called brahmanas will object. Such brahmanas, having been cursed by Nandishvara, are actually in a position where they have no discrimination between eatables and non-eatables. In other words, they're eating meat and simply live to maintain the perishable material body and its family. Such fallen conditioned souls are not worthy to be called brahmanas. But in Kali Yuga, they claim to be brahmanas. And if a person actually tries to attain the Brahminical qualifications, they hinder his progress. This is the situation in the present age. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu condemned this principle very strongly. During his conversation with Ramananda Rai, he said that regardless of whether a person is born in a Brahmana family or Sudra family, regardless of whether he is a householder or a sannyasi, if he knows the science of Krishna, he must be a spiritual master. There it is. Very significant statement by Lord Chaitanya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had many so-called Sudra disciples, like Haridas Thakur, born a Muslim, and Ramananda Raya, who was a businessman. Even the Goswamis, who were principal students of Lord Chaitanya, were also ostracized or kept out of Brahmana society. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by his grace, made them first-class Vaishnavas. Now, Vaishnava is way, way superior to a Brahmana. So that means that they are already Brahmanas, and they've surpassed the position of being a Brahmana by becoming a Vaishnava. Okay, text number 27. When all the hereditary Brahmanas, hereditary Brahmanas, were thus cursed by Nandishvara. A hereditary Brahmana is someone who is born in a family of Brahmanas, but is not necessarily qualified to be a Brahmana, but claim to be Brahmanas because they're born in a family of Brahmanas. When all the hereditary Brahmanas were thus cursed by Nandishvara, the sage Brigu, as a reaction, condemned the followers of Lord Shiva with this very strong Brahminical curse. Well, this Brahminical curse that we're going to hear about is still going on today. It's still active. The word durat yaya is particularly used in reference to Ramananda, uh, or curse by a Brahmana. A curse by a Brahmana is very strong, therefore, it is called Duratya or insurmountable. As the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, the stringent laws of nature are insurmountable. Similarly, if a curse is uttered by a Brahmana, that curse is also insurmountable. In other words, you can't stop it. But Bhagavad Gita also says that the curses or benedictions of the material world are, after all, material creations. The Chaitanya Charitamrita confirms that that which is accepted in this material world to be a benediction and that which is taken to be a curse are both on the same platform because they are material. Okay, there you go. To get out of this material contamination, one should take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as recommended in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Mam chayo vichar, no, I'm sorry. Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite, which says, the best path is to transcend all material curses and benedictions and take shelter of the Supreme Lord Krishna and remain in a transcendental position. Persons who have taken shelter of Krishna are always peaceful. They are never cursed by anyone, nor do they attempt to curse anyone. That is a transcendental position. Well, that's what Prabhupada has done. He's taken people who are from different levels of life and made them bona fide Vaishnavas. The Vaishnava is superior to a Brahmana. This, of course, has been argued previously, especially by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and then his son. And eventually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's son was able to defeat the false brahmanas in a debate that took place, and therefore has established that a person, even if they're born a Sudra, if they manifest the qualities of a bona fide Brahmana, they are Brahmana. It has nothing to do with what family they're born in. It has to do with their actual merits. So previously, everything was frozen. If you're born in a Brahmana, you're a Brahmana, even though you might be a very low-class person. But Lord Chaitanya established the meritorious or merit system. It doesn't matter what family you're born in. If you have the qualifications of a Brahmana, you are a Brahmana. Okay, text number 28. One who takes a vow to satisfy the Lord, to satisfy Lord Shiva, or who follows such principles, will certainly become an atheist and is diverted from transcendental scriptural injunctions. Well, in this in this uh, part of the Bhagavatam, there are curses and counter curses taking place. And these curses that were made a long time ago, they're still functioning today. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is sometimes seen that devotees of Lord Shiva imitate the characteristics of Lord Shiva. For example, Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison. So some of the followers of Lord Shiva imitate him and try to take intoxicants like ganja or marijuana. Here, the curse is that if someone follows such principles, he must become an infidel, someone who doesn't follow the regulative principles. Infidel means he doesn't have faith in the process of Krishna consciousness. He must become an infidel and turn against the principles of Vedic regulation. It is said that such persons such devotees of Lord Shiva will be such Shastra Paripantina, which means opposed to the conclusion of Shastra or scriptures. This is confirmed in the Padma Purana. Lord Shiva was ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to preach the impersonal or Mayavada philosophy for a particular purpose, just like Lord Buddha preached the philosophy of voidness for a particular purpose mentioned in the Shastras. Sometimes it is necessary to preach a philosophical doctrine which is against the Vedic conclusion. In the Shiva Purana, it is stated that Lord Shiva said to Parvati that in the Kali Yuga, in the body of a Brahmana, he would preach the Mayavad philosophy. This is generally found. Thus, it is generally found that the worshippers of Lord Shiva are Mayavadi followers. Lord Shiva himself says, Mayavadam asat shastram. Asat shastra, as explained here, means the doctrine of Mayavad philosophy, or becoming one with the Supreme. Brigamuni cursed that persons who worship Lord Shiva would become followers of this Mayavad Asat Shastra, untrue Shastra, which attempts to establish that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is impersonal. Besides that, among the worshippers of the Lord Shiva, there is a section who live a devilish life. Srimad Bhagavatam and Narada Pancharatra are authorized scriptures that are considered Sat Shastra, or scriptures which lead one to the path of God realization. Asat Shastras are just the opposite. Text 29. Those who vow to worship Lord Shiva are so foolish that they imitate him by keeping long hair on their heads. When initiated into worship of Lord Shiva, they prefer to live on wine, flesh, and other such things. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Indulging in wine and meat, keeping long hair on one's head, not bathing daily, and smoking ganja, marijuana, are some of the habits which are accepted by foolish creatures who do not have regulated lives. By such behavior, one becomes devoid of transcendental knowledge. In the initiation, into Shiva mantra, there are Mundrikashtaka, which means what? In which it is sometimes recommended that one make his sitting place on the vagina and thus desire nirvana or dissolution of existence. Well, the vagina is the sexual organ of a woman. So they, so one is recommended uh, to sit on the vagina and thus desire nirvana or dissolution of existence. In that process of worship, wine is needed, or sometimes in place of wine, palm tree juice, which is converted into an intoxicant. This is also this is also offered according to Shiva Agama, a scripture on the method of worshiping Lord Shiva. Wow, good thing we don't follow this. Text 30. Brigamuni continued, since you blaspheme the Vedas and the Brahmanas, who are followers of the Vedic principle, it is understood that you have already taken shelter of the doctrine of atheism. Brigamuni is cursing Nandishwara. In cursing Nandishwara, said that not only would they be degraded as atheists because of this curse, but they had already fallen in the standard of atheism because they had blasphemed the Vedas, which are the source of human civilization. Human civilization is based on the qualitative divisions of social order, namely the intelligent class, the martial class or warrior class, the productive class, and the laborer class. The Vedas provide the right direction for advancing in spiritual cultivation and economic development and regulating the principle of sense gratification so that ultimately one may be liberated from material contamination to his real state of spiritual identification, Aham Brahmasmi. As long as one is in the contamination of material existence, one changes bodies from the aquatics up to the position of Brahma. But the human form of life is the highest perfectional life in the material world. The Vedas give directions by which to elevate oneself in the next life. In the next life, the Vedas are the mother for such instructions, and the Brahmanas are persons who are in knowledge of the Vedas. Thus, they are the father. Thus, if one blasphemes the Vedas and Brahmanas, naturally one goes down to the status of atheism. The exact word used in Sanskrit is Nastika, which refers to one who does not believe in the Vedas but manufactures some concocted system of religion. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that the followers of the Buddhist system of religion are Gnostikas. In order to establish his doctrine of non-violence, Lord Buddha flatly refused to believe in the Vedas, and thus later on, Sankaracharya stopped the system of religion in India and forced it to go outside India. Yeah, so modern Buddhists, they are the people who are outside the Vedic system. Here it is stated Brahma cha Brahmanam, Brahmanan. Brahma means the Vedas. Aham Brahmasmi means I am in full knowledge. The Vedic assertion that one should think that he is Brahman, for actually he is Brahman. If Brahma or the Vedic spiritual science is condemned, and the masters of the spiritual science, the Brahmanas, are condemned, then where does human civilization stand? Brigamuni said, "It is not due to my cursing you that you shall become atheists. You are already situated in the principle of atheism. Therefore, you are condemned." Well, this cursing and counter cursing is going on here. Text 31. The Vedas give the eternal regulative principles for auspicious advancement in human civilization, which have been rigidly followed in the past. The strong evidence of this principle is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is called Janardana, the well-wisher of all living entities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has claimed that he is the father of all living entities, regardless of form. There are 8,400,000 different species of life forms, and Lord Krishna claims that he is the father of all. Very important statement. Because the living entities are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they're all sons of the Lord. And for their benefit, because they are hovering under the impression that they can lord it over material nature, the Vedas are given to them for their guidance. Therefore, the Vedas are called Aporusheya. Okay, it's an important word. For they are not written by any man or demigod. Yeah, they come down from the spiritual world, including, they are not written by any man or demigod, including the first creature, Brahma. Brahma is not the creator or author of the Vedas. He is also one of the living beings in this material world. Therefore, he does not have the power to write or speak the Vedas independently. Every living entity within this material world is subject to four deficiencies. He commits mistakes, he accepts one thing for another, he cheats, and he has imperfect senses. The Vedas, however, are not written by any living creature within this material world. Therefore, they are said to be Aporusheya. No one can trace out the history of the Vedas. Of course, modern human civilization has no chronological history of the world or the universe, and it cannot present actual historical facts older than 3,000 years. But no one has traced out when the Vedas were written, because they were never written by any living being within this material world. Well, if you go to college, they'll talk about and teach the Vedas, and they say, well, they are relatively uh, 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 new, not new, but maybe just 1 or 2 centuries before Right? All other systems of knowledge are defective because they have been written or spoken by men or demigods who are products of this material creation. But Bhagavad Gita is a Purusheya, for it was not spoken by any human being or any demigod of this material creation. There it is. It was spoken by Lord Krishna, who is beyond the material creation. That is accepted by such stalwart scholars as Sankaracharya, not to speak of other acharyas such as Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya. Sankaracharya has accepted that Narayana and Krishna are transcendental, a very important statement. And in Bhagavad Gita, also, Lord Krishna has established Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matak Sarvam Pravartate. I am the origin of everything, everything, and I am the origin of everything. Everything emanates from me. Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matak Sarvam Pravartate. This material creation, including Brahma and Shiva and all the demigods, has been created by him, for everything has emanated from him. He also says that the purpose of all the Vedas is to understand him. Vedaishta sarvir aham eva vedya. He is the original Vedavit, knower of the Vedas, and Vedakrit, or compiler of the Vedanta. Brahma is not the compiler of the Vedas. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is established Tene Brahma Hirda, the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, instructed Brahma in the Vedic knowledge through his heart. Therefore, the evidence that Vedic knowledge is free from the defects of mistakes, illusions, cheating, and imperfection is that it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardhan, and has thus been followed from time immemorial, beginning from Brahma. The Vedic religion, or the principles of the Vedas, have been followed by the highly cultured population of India since time immemorial. In other words, you can't actually know when it started. That means you won't know when it'll end. It won't end. And something material has a beginning and an end. Something transcendental has no beginning and no end. That's why it says the highly cultured population of India, since time immemorial, no one can trace out the history of the Vedic religion. And there it is. Therefore, it is Sanatana, meaning eternal. And any blasphemy against the Vedas is calculated to be atheism. The Vedas are described as Setu, which means a bridge. If one wants to attain his spiritual existence, one has to cross an ocean of nescience, meaning ignorance. The Vedas are the bridge by which to cross such a great ocean. Wow, how can you cross such a great ocean? It's impossible. But when that ocean is, let's say, uh, it becomes smaller, as small as the water in the hoof of a cow, then you can cross it easily. The Vedas describe how to divide the human race into four divisions according to quality and working capacity. This is a very scientific system. And it is also Sanatana, meaning eternal, for no one can trace out its history. And it also has no dissolution, meaning never stopped. No one can stop the system of Varna and Ashrama. Now that's the truth. The uh, the communists tried to stop the system of Varna and Ashrama. So Varna means the four uh, organizations or levels of material life, and ashrama means the four levels of spiritual life. The communists tried to eliminate all the, let's say, uh, the uh, concept of what you would call uh, uh, the caste system. And they tried, but they failed. There was even though they professed to eliminate all the different castes, they still had caste system functioning in communism. No, and that's why it says here, and it's a very significant statement, no one can stop the system of Varna and Ashrama or the castes and divisions because they're established by Krishna. For example, whether or not one accepts the name Brahmana, there is a class in society which is known as intelligent class, which is interested in spiritual understanding and philosophy. Similarly, there's a class of men who are interested in administration and in ruling others. In the Vedic system, these martially spirited men, meaning the Kshatriyas, are called Kshatriyas. Similarly, everywhere there is a class of men who are interested in economic development, business, industry, and money making, they are called Vaishyas. And there is another class who are neither intelligent nor materially spirited, nor endowed with the capacity for economic development, but who simply can serve others. They are called Sudras, or laborer class. This system is Sanatana, eternal. It comes from time immemorial, and it will continue in the same way. There is no power in the world which can stop it. Now, the communists tried to stop it. They tried to stop the caste system, and they failed. Even though they tried their best to stop it, it still continued through the, I think, 80 to 90 years that communism was very, very important. Therefore, since this Sanatana Dharma system is eternal, one can elevate himself to the highest standard of spiritual life by following the Vedic principles. Okay, well, see, that's the real caste system. It is the system by which people can gradually be elevated from lower states to higher states. It's not the false caste system, which is rigid, so rigid that you cannot advance in it. If you're born a Sudra, you're Sudra your whole life. But that's not the real caste system. The real caste system is dynamic, it's not static. So even one born in a Sudra family can become a Brahmana by qualification or meritorious system. A meritorious system means by merit. If you manifest the qualities of a Brahmana, then you are a Brahmana. It is stated that formerly the sages followed the system. Therefore, to follow the Vedic system is to follow the standard etiquette of society. So once there was a boy who came to a saint and he asked him if he could be his disciple. And the saintly person said, well, I got to know what your gotra is, what family you were born in, whether you were born in a Brahmana family or a Kshatriya family or a Vaishya family or a Sudra family. So the boy went back and talked to his mother to find out what was his gotra. And when he asked that question, his mother got teared up and she said, well, I don't really know. I was not living a good life previously. And I cannot tell you what your gotra is. In other words, she was having illicit sex. So the boy was shocked. And when he went back to this sage who asked him to say what uh, his caste is before he could accept him as a disciple, the boy said, I don't know. My mother doesn't know what is my gotra. So the sage said, okay, I accept you. And the boy was surprised. He said, you accept me? He said, yes. He said, why? He said, you are Brahmana. You told the truth. So that's the real caste system. It's not hereditary. It's based on its merit. So this boy was honest. Therefore, it means he was a Brahmana. But the followers of Lord Shiva who are drunkards, there's a lot of them, and who are addicted to intoxication, to intoxicants and sex life, who do not bathe and who smoke ganja are against all human etiquette. The conclusion is that persons who rebel against the Vedic principles are themselves the evidence that the Vedas are authoritative. That's a nice statement. The conclusion is that persons who rebel against the Vedic principles are themselves the evidence that the Vedas are authoritative. Because by not following the Vedic principles, they become like animals. Such animalistic persons are themselves evidence of the supremacy of the Vedic regulation. Yeah, they develop all these really bad habits, smoking ganja, having illicit sex, eating meat, etc. That proves that the Vedic principles are valid. Because the people that don't follow the Vedic principle, they become like animals. And there's a lot of animals today. And that proves that the supremacy of the Vedic regulations. If you follow the Vedic regulations, you don't become an animal. You become a person who has control of his senses and his mind and can be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Okay. Text 32. By blaspheming the principles of the Vedas, which are pure and supreme, and the supreme path of the saintly persons, certainly you followers of Bhutapati, meaning Lord Shiva, will descend to the standard of atheism without a doubt. Let me read that again. by blaspheming the principles of the Vedas, which are the pure and supreme path of the saintly persons. Certainly, you followers of Bhuttapati, Lord Shiva, will descend to the standard of atheism without a doubt. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shiva is described here as Bhuta Rat, the ghosts and those who are situated in the material mode of ignorance are called Bhutas or Bhutarat, refers to the leader of the creatures who are in the lowest standard of material modes of nature, meaning ignorance. Another meaning of Bhutas is anyone who has taken birth or anything which is produced. So in that sense, Lord Shiva may be accepted as the father of this material world. Here, of course, Bhrigu Muni takes Lord Shiva as the leader of the lowest creatures. The characteristics of the lowest class of men have already been described. They do not bathe. They have long hair on their heads, and they are addicted to intoxicants. In comparison with the path followed by the followers of Bhuttarat, the Vedic system is certainly excellent, for it promotes people to spiritual life as the highest eternal principle of human civilization. If one decries or blasphemes the Vedic principles, then he falls to the standard of atheism. Okay, well, I think we'll stop there. Are there any questions? We read a lot of verses today. My papers here. Are there any questions or comments?
Hello.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yes, Prabhu.
Maharaj, now whoever actually follows Shiva, then they will not go to the spiritual world at all, or I didn't follow Maharaj. See, a lot of people say if you pray Shiva, Shiva will take care and he will keep you ever. Where actually they will actually, if they follow Shiva's puja and all, where they land ultimately.
Well, there's different, let's say, qualities of Shiva worshippers. Some are brahmanas that will make spiritual advancement, and some are ghosts and hobgoblins that are demoniac. Shiva, you see, is very merciful. He's so merciful that he accepts all the rejects of other let's say brahmanas who reject disciples for different reasons. So Shiva will accept them as disciples. So he's most merciful, but he has to deal with uh, you know very low class people sometimes. Not all of Shiva's devotees are low class people, but there are some. But that's because he's very merciful. He tries to help everyone. So the rejects from the Vedic system, they usually end up following Lord Shiva because he's very merciful. That's why it says here, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 5.18, Pandita Samadarshina, one who is perfectly learned, does not see anyone lesser or greater. Well, that's pointing toward Lord Shiva. because he sees everyone from the spiritual platform. Thus, only the alternative left to Lord Shiva was to leave in order to stop his follower, Nandishwara, as well as Brigamuni, from cursing and counter cursing in that way. Well, let's see. Brigamuni represents the Brahmanas, and Nandishwara recommends the followers of Shiva. So, Pandita Samadarshana, one who is perfectly learned, does not see anyone as lesser or greater. Okay, well, that is the position of transcendental people because he sees everyone from the spiritual platform. Spiritual platform is seeing the potential of every living being to be a devotee, and so of the Lord. So therefore, they get training from a bona fide spiritual master, even though they are born in lower families. Okay, so the cursing that was going on between Daksha and what was it, Nandishwara?
Nandeshwara and Bhrigu.
Anu?
Bhrigu.
Bhrigu Muni?
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't understand. Gugu. I didn't understand that.
Bhrigu.
Uh, yeah. So Nandishwara as well as Bhrigu Muni, uh, it says here, thus the only alternative left to Lord Shiva was to leave in order to stop his follower Nandishwara as well as Bhrigu Muni from cursing and counter cursing in that way. Well, the curses of Nandishwara and Bhrigu are still functioning today. So there was cursing and counter cursing going on between Lord Shiva's followers and the parties of Daksha and Bhrigu. Well, those curses are still functioning today.
Yes, Maharaj. Actually, Bhagavad Gita is also Vedas, right? When we try to give this knowledge to the Shiva followers, they don't agree and they argue a lot actually why Krishna is great and all. How to, because of this curse, now I'm today only I realized because of this curse that impact is there. But how to overcome that kind of a scenario, how to bring them and tell them, hey, Vedas, if you want to have a Vedas knowledge, you need to follow Krishna.
It's by Prashadam.
Okay.
You have to feed them a lot of Prashadam. Then they'll gradually begin to understand. That's why we distribute Prashadam freely.
Oh, very good, Maharaj. Okay.
I remember, when I first came in contact with Krishna consciousness, I wasn't so interested in the philosophy. And I definitely didn't really like the devotees, but I like Prashadam. Therefore, I couldn't stop coming. Well, even though I like sort of joined, I wasn't serious about joining, but I acted like I joined. But every day I was going to leave, but every day I would say, well, I'll leave, but after Prashadam, morning Prashadam. And then I would say, well, I'll stay until the afternoon Prashadam. And then I would say, well, I'll take the evening Prashadam, right? So that way I never left because of Prashadam, which is a supernatural product. It's not an ordinary thing. If you take Prashadam regularly, you become purified and you want to stay in the company of genuine devotees. That's why it's very important that we have nice prasadam. Okay, well, I think we'll stop there unless there's other questions or comments.
Guru Maharaj is interesting. It's mentioned in the Bhagavatam now. They eat sarva bhakshaha. They eat all sorts of food.
The demons.
Who worship Lord Shiva.
Yeah.
And now it explains why Swami Vivekananda and
they were all meat
succession,
eaters.
why they are meat eater, why they don't reject anything, they just eat whatever comes.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're demons. Okay, so these curses that are taking place between Daksha and the others, they're still functioning today. Yeah.
So this
Nandishwara and Bhrigu Muni, they're cursing and counter cursing. Those curses are still functioning. Yeah.
These curses are born of anger, Guru Maharaj.
Yes.
And this anger is bad.
Well, yeah, because you're forgetting that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead when you get that anger, right? And then you do something crazy, like cursing someone. The way people curse is, they'll get their Brahmin thread, and then they'll snap it, break it, and make a curse or make a vow of, that is detrimental to other people.
But would they really affect a pure devotee, Guru Maharaj, even these curses?
No.
Yeah, they won't even touch, right?
But you have to be a real pure devotee. You can't be a wishy-washy devotee. You have to be completely washed, no wishy-washy. Yeah, because look, it's dangerous, very dangerous to take the position of a bona fide Vaishnava, but still be engaged in sinful activity. Then you can be cursed and you won't be able to counter the curse. But if you're strictly following, the curse does not stick on you. It doesn't affect you.
It's like the water doesn't affect the lotus.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Haridas Thakur was cursed, but it didn't affect him.
Who cursed him?
Huh?
Who cursed him?
Well, you can, he's being tempted by this prostitute.
Okay.
Right? He was tempted by two prostitutes. One was a regular prostitute, and the other was not really a prostitute, but it was what's her name? The mother of creation. What's her name?
Maya.
Huh?
Maya Devi?
Maya Devi herself. Yeah. Maya Devi herself came and tried to make him fall down, and he didn't. And then she surrendered to him and became his disciple. That is the power of Haridas Thakur. Because why? Because always chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare. We should follow his example. Always chant Hare Krishna. Yeah. Then you'll always be protected by the mercy of the Lord. Okay, well, we'll stop right there. And our takeaway today is Pandita Samadarshina, one who is perfectly learned, does not see anyone as lesser or greater, because he sees everyone from the spiritual platform. Thus, the only alternative left to Lord Shiva was to leave in order to stop his follower, Nandishwara, as well as Bhrigu Muni, from cursing and counter-cursing in that way. Well, anyway, this Pandita Samadarshana means one who is perfectly learned, does not see anyone as lesser or greater, because he sees everyone from the spiritual platform. Okay, that's our takeaway today. And you can see, like Prabhupada, when he came to the United States, he didn't say, oh, well, these American boys and girls are engaged in illicit sex, they're smoking marijuana, they can't be devotees, not possible. So I'll just go back to India. No, he didn't say that. He saw the potential. These are living entities in the human form of life. That means that they were originally with Krishna, but now they have deviated. But because they originally come from Krishna, they can go back to Krishna. So then he tried to help all these young hippies to make them happies by chanting Hare Krishna. And it worked. They all started chanting. So many young people started chanting Hare Krishna and then eventually getting initiated and then eventually becoming genuine Vaishnavas. Of course, the Brahmanas, false Brahmanas, they did not accept that the Western so-called Vaishnavas were bona fide. But Prabhupada said, just ignore what they say. They were saying, that Prabhupada was making a mistake. He was contaminating, Vaishnava culture by accepting such low-class people as his disciples. But as long as the devotees did not violate the regulative principles and were chanting, they were considered bona fide Vaishnavas also. But the false Brahmanas did not accept the devotees. And even today, it's the same thing. I remember one time I did a program at somebody's house, and afterwards, one man came and talked to me. He said, hey, he said, you were pretty good, but you're not bona fide. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you're not born you're not born in a Brahmana family. I said, yeah, but I was initiated a Brahmana. He said, that doesn't count. You have to be born in a Brahmana family. So I didn't get into an argument with him. I just, said, okay, well, thank you very much. And I walked away from him. But he was serious. He was really serious. First of all, he congratulated me on doing a very good, puja, right? Chanting Hare Krishna and so forth, and doing a fire sacrifice and everything. But then he said, you're not bona fide. You're born in the West, and you're a Gora, a white guy. So you'll have to wait till your next life to become a Brahmana. And there are a lot of people like that. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Now we understand more and more how merciful Srila Prabhupada is. He saved us. And he did not make these false caste system, he made us or helped us come to the level of being Vaishnavas. That's superior to being a Brahmana. Haribol. Thank you very much. And now we will take a 11-hour break and come back again to Srimad Bhagavatam, the greatest book in the history of the world. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada. Ki Jai.
One question, Maharaj.
Yeah.
So Vaishnava is above than these caste system or the varnas.
Yes. If he's following properly.
Real Vaishnava.
Yeah.
And second question, Maharaj, you said these varnas are also dynamic. So dynamic in the sense
You can advance.
So like from Shudra to Brahmana or go beyond Brahmana.
Look at Haridas Thakur, born in a Muslim family, but Lord Chaitanya accepted him as even more than a Brahmana, right? But he would not in public sit down with Haridas Thakur and eat and things like that, so that the caste Brahmanas wouldn't criticize him or criticize Haridas Thakur. But Lord Chaitanya would go secretly to sit down with Haridas Thakur and have prasadam and discourse with him. Because the Brahmanas are very rigid at that time, right? They were not bona fide in the sense of understanding the mercy of Lord Chaitanya.
Hare
Yep.
Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
When this talking happening between Bhrigu Muni and Nandishwara, why the Shiva Lord did not stop them?
Why he didn't stop them?
It's written in this purport.
Well, yeah, it says here. Why? Go ahead. What did you say?
You heard.
No, go ahead. You said.
It's in the purport 33 text. It says the Lord Shiva's excellent character is described in spite of cursing and counter cursing between the parties of Daksha and Shiva. Because he is the greatest Vaishnava, he was so sober that he did not say anything. A Vaishnava is always tolerant, and Lord Shiva is considered the topmost Vaishnava. So his character, as shown in this scene, is excellent. He became more morose because he knew that these people, both his men and Dakshas, were unnecessarily cursing and counter cursing one another without any interest in spiritual life. From this point of view, he did not see anyone as lower or higher because he is Vaishnava. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 5.18, one who is perfectly learned does not see anyone as lesser or greater because he sees everyone from spiritual platform. Thus, the only alternative left to Lord Shiva was to leave in order to stop his followers, Nandishvara as well as
His
Harivilas.
follower.
Stop his follower in Nandeshwara as well as Ragumuni from cursing and counter cursing in that way.
Yeah, there it is. And that's what we should do also. When people get into big arguments, just walk away.
Yeah, but Maharaj, as leaders in we talk about also, right? If something happens, you should stop this kind of a misunderstanding. Otherwise, it will go into different direction. Here, if you are silent, it's it will actually make things worse. Like now, this curse is really impacting so many living beings. If they would have stopped at that time, it would have been better, Maharaj, or how to interpret this?
Well, silence is louder than arguing. Just like when Lord Chaitanya was being spoken to by what was his name? I forget his name. Anyway, he was trying to educate Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya didn't ask any questions, and he remained silent. And eventually, the other person said, "Well, you haven't asked any questions. Does that mean you understand everything I'm saying?" And Lord Chaitanya said, "Well, I didn't really understand what you were saying." Uh, so he said, "But if you want me to give the right explanation, I will tell you." So then that other person kept his mouth shut, and Lord Chaitanya explained the real Krishna consciousness. But he remained silent while the other person was trying to convince him of Mayavad philosophy. So sometimes it's good to be silent and not say anything. And other times, when a person is willing to listen, and Prabhupada told us that also. He said, "Don't waste your time talking to unholy people who are not really interested in hearing. Rather, go and find those people who are interested in hearing, and spend your energy and time speaking to them. If you want to try and convince people who are not interested in Krishna consciousness, not only will they not like to hear it, but they might become, let's say, offended that you're preaching to them. So we should only preach and try and help those people who are interested in Krishna consciousness. But sometimes we'll give a lecture in a large group of people without knowing who is interested and who's not interested. Well, that's a risk that we take. And that's the mercy of a genuine devotee who take that risk. But in general, we should avoid unholy people and not really associate with them. But sometimes the devotee will take the risk to preaching to unholy people, especially when you go in Sankirtan. So that's a risk that we take. It's like Haridas Thakur took that risk, but he was injured. So these type of things happen. I remember one time on Sankirtan, we were going through an area where there were butchers, slaughtering animals. And one of those butchers grabbed me by my head, right? And then he put a knife on my neck, right? And he was laughing and he was looking at his friends and said, "Should I cut his head off?" That really happened, And I just didn't fight with him or anything. I just stood there quietly. And then he let me go. If I tried to fight with him, then he probably would have injured me. So sometimes you get into situations. We went through a neighborhood of butchers, and one guy, he had bloody clothes on, and he grabbed me and put his knife on my neck. But then he just let me go because I wasn't really worried. I was just chanting Hare Krishna. So sometimes you get into those situations where you meet very dangerous people. But if we chant Hare Krishna and completely depend on Krishna, he will absolutely protect his devotees. So we should not be worried. We should be rather concerned about the person's, let's say, animosity and try to pacify him. Just like when, let's see, who was that? Anyway, we should try and pacify people by good behavior. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, well, we'll stop there and pick everything up 11 hours from now.